Don Sweeney saying, hey, we're looking at the prospects, but we could make some moves. Nothing's off the table. NHL Draft begins Friday night. Kasey, let's start with the stick and pick situation for the Bruins.
Right.
At 7 overall, this is a deep center draft, which is perfect. We know the cream of the crop is a defenseman, but it's a deep center draft for the Bruins. You're sitting at 7. You're the person with the phone. You're making the call, making the pick. What are the prospects? Who are the prospects you're watching for, and who would you go with if you're the Bruins?
So I will say the mock drafts over the past 2 weeks have narrowed it down to 2 guys, Jake O'Brien and Porter Martone. And Porter Martone is a name that we started seeing quite a bit a couple months ago, kind of getting circulated in. Jake O'Brien has been like the loudest name thus far over the last week or so. I love both of these names. One of them screams more ready than the other to me in terms of like, are they going to utilize and develop this kid on the quicker end and make sure that he's a part of the Bruins lineup sooner rather than later? If that's the case, then they don't have to make any emergency breaks or big sells when it comes to free agency frenzy July 1 on Tuesday. So this is going to tell us how, let's just say, aggressive the Bruins will be on July 1.
Who's more ready out of the two, Martone or O'Brien, in your opinion?
Porter Martone.
Yeah. I mean, O'Brien just turned 18 last month. No, excuse me, earlier this month. It's still June.
Exactly.
So he's going to be.
That's the part that throws you for a loop.
He's going to be 18 when he's taking that next step in his progression. What about Martone says to you that he's ready for the NHL?
A number of things. First of all, you're talking about a guy who's 6'3" and 205. So Jake O'Brien hasn't even hit that 200-pound weight limit quite
170.
yet. 170. And again, just turned 18, so you're going to need to put weight on him. You're going to need to put strength on him. And we already have guys, you know, Dean, and then Mason Lohrei joined Hockey Hub yesterday saying how he's getting stronger. So you don't want to bring in somebody that's part of something that needs to be developed. You're looking at Porter Martone that already has some strength to him, already has that size at 6'3". But more importantly, it's the NHL comparison to Corey Perry. And it's also his vision on the ice. You're talking about a guy that can slow down the game, which is funny because we just talked about that on the basketball end of things. But Porter Martone can slow things down. He's really good at finding, acknowledging, and kind of simulating the rhythm of his line mates. So somebody who has that ability to read you and set you up accordingly, that's brilliant as well, because you can bring in a number of skilled players, but if somebody can't feed them the puck, then there's this disconnect and you're just waiting to find that chemistry to come to life. So that's also a guy who I feel like chemistry comes in alignment with him very quickly also. And we talked about this with another guy beforehand, but this is somebody who loves to take on defenders. He loves to challenge them. He loves to toy with them, which also creates time and space. So he just has the ability to manipulate on both sides of the puck, which is very exciting for me. Again, coming in at 6'3", 205. Love the fact that he has a younger sister that wants to be a D1 player. It would be really sick to have Porter Martone here. And I believe his sister's name is Abby. If she ends up joining the Boston Fleet down the stretch, it would just be another thing that would make Boston that much more exciting.
Play some college hockey, BC, BU, Northeastern, Harvard, you know, all the decent schools we got in the area. UConn, throughout Quinnipiac too. I like the Porter Martone when it's the more immediate impact. And exactly, to your point, where what they do at 7 overall could tell us a lot about what the outlook is for a timeline. Porter Martone, though, you list everything. That is someone that could go top 5. So it could be, okay, what's the pivot then if they're staying at 7? Roger McQueen, 6'5", 190. He's 19. Really big, skilled, great mover, good with the puck on his stick. And he's good in front of the net. I think that's an area that the Bruins really need to address. Being in front of the net on both ends of the ice. And then someone that could clear out space if a puck's in front of them, help out the goalie, and on the other end, know how to screen goalies, know how to get in the way, and be smart as a center. And that's a guy that's 19 years old. But again, we talk about the weight, we talk about the height. Jake O'Brien, 170, he's 6'2", so like he has to fill out that frame. I like the O'Brien call, though, because his vision, his playmaking, he is more of a creator as a center. When you talk about Martone, that's more of a scorer as a center and his ability to take defenders on one-on-one. What's good with the Bees is you wanted a top 3 pick for them for sure. Like if James Hagens was a Bruin, like that was the dream.
I know.
If Michael Misa could become a Bruin, that was a dream. You wanted them top 3, top 2. They fall at 7, but this is the draft. If you're not going to get where you wanted to get a premier guy, then at least it's a deep center draft because there are the options on the back end. A Caleb Denoyer, another center that they could end up taking at 7.
Yeah, and that's another name that kind of just popped up. I believe Craig Button had him on the list for the Boston Bruins to pick up. But kind of circling back to Jake O'Brien, if that ends up being the route that the Boston Bruins take, then you're looking at a promising future down the stretch here. You're talking about a guy that's really keen on picking up assists, 66 points through 66 games, or 66 assists through 66 games. So somebody who also just has like great vision with the setup and on the puck. They're concerned about his skating. I only point that out because that can be a different kind of development. There are some kids that they focus on skating all the way up until their teenage years, and then they finally pick up the stick and the puck. So it just takes a minute to figure out what that development will look like with his skating so that he can be even more effective pace-wise to set up for those assists.
Yeah.
Something else with Porter Martone is that now with Marco Sturm at the helm for the Boston Bruins, stellar two-way winger, and that's kind of becoming a little bit more of an identity for guys that can play out on the wing. Somebody who can have both roles and contribute on both sides of the ice. A 200-foot game is another big identity to it. So you want to have IQ, you want to have less development than more development, and more importantly, that versatility to someone. I also love the fact that Martone is a captain on his team. You just see a lot of maturity and great character to who he is, how he's spoken for. His dad played in the OHL, had him in it being drafted by the Buffalo Sabres, actually bringing that back into the loop. So he kind of fits the bill and checks a lot of boxes in terms of like when you have a guy like Marco Sturm that sees the potential in his players, that knows how to develop guys, get them ready, get them confident, and then this kid already has such a leadership head on him and arsenal of skills. I feel like he'd be a really good plug and play.
He would be, and when you list all those attributes that Marco Sturm looks in, that also is someone, a Caleb Denoyer, that he falls into that. Good two-way player, more of a creator than a scorer, again at the center position, 6'1 plus, around 180, just 18, but that's someone that you want to talk about reliable. Like, that's the word they use with a Denoyer. And for something that, well, Marco Sturm preaches too, and it's a way of like, that's what they want to see from the Bees on the ice. Power play wasn't good enough. The overall product on the ice was not good enough. But you bring in someone that's reliable, that understands how to move the puck through the neutral zone, is responsible with the puck, and can play on both ends to help out their goalie. You could pay a goaltender plenty of money. If you don't know how to help out your goaltender, especially defensively, it doesn't matter what you're paying them. If they keep getting tough looks, tough recovery, tough bounces coming back at them, a Denoyer or Martone, to your point. As we talk through these options, like a Jake O'Brien, that's a long-term play, and there'll be other teams that could serve. When a Denoyer or Martone, maybe a Roger McQueen as well, that seems like a play for the Bruins, where it's someone that's closer to being NHL ready, and also someone that can play and have an impact on both ends. It's tough to look at a Jake O'Brien, and again, only 170 pounds, very young. Looking at photos of him, like not a speck of facial hair.
He's
not
a baby.
He has not hit that like real growth spurt. Like hit puberty, and then there's that second go when you're in your college years. Everyone grows, it gets bigger, stronger. You gain a different sense of strength. He hasn't even hit that yet, though. So when that extra growth spurt comes in, who knows? From 6'2", 170, could end up being 6'5", 195, be a great player. But you don't want ifs right now if you're the Bruins.
That's the thing.
You want the high
fan
floor.
base, the fan base is kind of asking for more of a solidified answer versus a what if or, a speak to potential. So if
there's a gamble and then there's an investment.
Exactly. And this will be a little bit more on the gamble side, or again, it's fitting that bright future, Bill, because something else when it comes to O'Brien, if you're not going to try to get him acclimated sooner rather than later, which that's not the case for this kind of guy. Power play, a lot of his points are coming off of special teams. So you're talking about somebody later down the stretch after more development can come and alleviate or be a key piece to your power play that you're looking to kind of emphasize on. And any progress that you're going to get from him down the stretch is still worthwhile. But this is what tells me that if they went with an O'Brien, they're going to have to get a bit of a heavy hitter in the free agency. We're going to have to see a little bit more out of the two guys that they brought in this previous season as well. So that's my only thing. It's going to be very telling to see what direction that they're going in. We're still calling it a retool, so I don't know if this makes sense if we're calling it a retool and there's potential out there that can come in a little bit more. You mentioned Denoyer. Something else with him, when you have these guys that are more creative than always trying to take the goal themselves, you look at a little bit too much of play on the puck. Something that's really nice about Denoyer is that he's not always trying to get too many extra touches on the puck, which just can cause a massive amount of turnovers, especially with the pace of the game these days. And that's something that we saw a lot too. We saw guys that are really creative, but just holding on to the freaking puck too much. So something else in the development asset, if that's somebody that has the maturity to be okay, I don't need to get too fancy with this. I can be creative without taking too many touches on the puck. Then again, the maturity of everything can show you quicker development, a quicker fit for the Bruins down the stretch.
You think they're locked in on a center? Because even if you look at how their lines break down now, it could be Zacha, Elias Lindholm, Casey Middlestat. They're top 9 centers, right? They're top 3 centers in their top 9 skating. But there's a guy like a Pavel Zacha, could play the wing, but he plays so well next to Pastrnak. Elias Lindholm, Casey Middlestat, Marco Sturm is uncommitted to them as centers. I want to see them as players. I want to see them as players and go from there. You think same thing, Bruins are locked in on a center when it would come to that first-round pick? Or is it more forward, maybe someone versatility, and it's kind of a fit on what it could be overall.
I personally would almost go a versatile winger of some sort.
Yeah.
Because like you said, we saw, especially down the stretch of the season and during the toughest time when you're collecting loss after loss after loss, we saw tremendous play out of Zacha. We saw Lindholm start to kind of come to life a bit more. And we know the potential that Casey Middlestat has, especially given the time with a team. He really started to take off with the Colorado Avalanche when given the ice time. You're talking about somebody that can make things happen in the middle of the ice. We saw glimmers of that over and over again. So giving time in the offseason, having a proper training camp, I think they're fine down the center. Plus, I'm a big believer in Fraser Mitten and what he's going to be able to bring to this lineup eventually. So being able to kind of understand that the center group can do their job, a versatile winger is just going to help like add value to everything. You need somebody who can consistently bring pace and push pucks forward and help set up those plays. Because any time that the puck got loose, there was just never that polish off. There was never that consistency outside of Pasta of just making sure that they're cleaning up the garbage and finding the back of the net.
I like the Fraser Minton mention. I also think of a Will Zellers. Like, he'll play his college hockey at North Dakota State. He'll develop there. That's what I'm interested too. Whoever they go with, do they end up coming up to the AHL, save to Jake O'Brien, or do you say, hey, go play American college hockey? You've been playing junior hockey, now make the leap towards playing American college hockey. Physically get better there and develop there. We'll see what the next steps are as well.